Did you know that 70% of real estate agents sold less than 5 homes last year? In fact, 50% sold less than 1 home. Choosing the wrong agent could cost you thousands of dollars, in some cases, even more.
Well, I'm the numbers guy, so I can't let you have all the stats, Jeb. This is really important. We've talked on the show a million times. It's an 80-20 industry. It's actually moving more towards 95-5. So with that, the top 20% of the agents are going to handle 80 to 90% of the transactions. So it doesn't mean that you need the top person by volume, but you need someone that knows their stuff. Becoming an agent requires less than 70 hours of training. In some states, considerably less. So you could be dealing with someone, yes, they have a license. Yes, they may have completed a transaction or two, but just having a license doesn't really tell you much about their ability to help you. Important to remember, the median gross income for realtors in 2023 was $55,800. So when we look at median income in the U.S. is more than that. So the typical realtor makes less than just the average job worker from that perspective. So they're not doing a lot of transactions. They haven't committed a lot of time to getting licensed, and they may not be the best fit for you.
And that's what we're going to dive into in today's video. It's really the 5 questions that you should ask your real estate agent before buying a home with them, right? We all know several people that are real estate agents. I mean, I know a bunch. I'm in the business, but I always say, listen, you probably know multiple agents. Your cousin's probably an agent. That your mother-in-law is probably an agent. Everybody knows someone, but the reality is, are they in a position? Do they have the experience, the negotiating skills to ultimately get you to the finish line at a competitive price and good terms?
Absolutely. Are they a full-time professional agent? Is this their job? Is this a career, or is it a sideline? Is it a nice side hustle, a little extra income? And we're going to go through the questions to really separate the men from the boys, the women from the girls out there in this industry, to make sure that you are working with someone who is going to be your advocate, give you a smooth, stress-free process, and get you the numbers that you need for your home.
Now, earlier you said you don't have to be working with the top agent by volume, but it is important that get an idea of how many transactions they've done in the last 12 months. How many buyers have they represented? How many sellers are they representing? What areas are they doing business in? These are all really, really important things to start the conversation with, Josh. So let's kind of start around that question about transactions, because you might look at it as a buyer and go, well, I don't need them doing 100 transactions. I just need them doing 1. They need to have some experience. And the reality is, they probably need to have a little bit more than that.
Well, let's use the example. Jeb, you and I are here in Huntington Beach. We have 2 mega agents in this market. And if you get their marketing, say, hey, I'm the number 1 agent in this area, and it could be hundreds of transactions in a year. Mm-hmm. Do you need that answer? I don't think you do. I don't think you need an agent that does hundreds of transactions, but you also need someone who does more than 1 or 2. For many reasons, because the market is always changing and the forms are always changing. The people that you're working with are always changing. So what is important to a buyer about their agent being active in the market, and what is the right number or the right answer if someone asks you as a realtor, how many transactions have you completed in the last 12 months and how many of them were buy sides?
Yeah, let's go back a minute, because you said something important there, is that, you have these top agents, these mega agents kind of controlling an area. But what I will say is, oftentimes you're not getting the mega agent. You're not getting the face that's on the brochure. That's not who's helping you. Who's helping you is the newbie agent that came on the team that needs some help getting clients, the one working the open house, the person that it's being handed off, if you will. Maybe you have a conversation with that person at some point, depending on your price point, because a lot of these mega agents are only handling the high volume stuff, the high luxury price points. They're not dealing with the entry level first time home buyer in many, many cases. So just start with that in mind, that, hey, you don't necessarily need that person or that face. But what I will say is, out of knowing a lot of agents, I know some really, really good agents that are really high producers that do a lot of volume. And I know some really, really good agents that only do 10 transactions a year. So it comes with a little bit of context. I think you can't just say, hey, they have to have 5 transactions in this neighborhood or 5 transactions in the last year. That's not how I would approach it. But you do want to see volume in the market that you're in, some experience, because as we know, the last 3 to 4 years, Josh, the market's been anything but normal. And if you weren't in that market, during that period of time selling homes, and the last home you sold was in 2019, you're going to come in and you're going to have no idea what's going on because you just don't have that experience that you need in an evolving market like that.
So if I'm hearing you right, there's not a number. There's not, hey, we clear this bar 8 transactions, 24 transactions in the last year. The important part to me is that this person that you're dealing with is a negotiator on your behalf with multiple other parties. If you ask a question and they stutter, stammer, can't give you a good answer, there might be a great reason why they did 4 transactions in the last 12 months. But they need to be able to think on their feet and give you a clear and succinct answer that you're really comfortable with, because that is an indicator. Not only are they in the market and they can explain how they know and are on top of that market, but they're also demonstrating to you how they're going to be able to negotiate on your behalf when someone else asks them a tough question.
And I'm going to tell you that your agent might not have all the answers, but they should be able to tell you, hey, listen, I don't know that. Let me go find that out for you. And not just sit there and try to bullshit you through the question to make them seem like an experienced agent. And what'll happen, if I'm being completely honest, is a lot of times you'll get agents using the team's experience, the team's volume, in order to make up for their lack of experience and lack of volume. So be careful when you're doing that. Just make sure you're getting transactions that your agent has actually closed, that they've actually been a part of. And you can do that by asking for references, asking for names, going through Google reviews. If you're looking through the Google reviews and it's all the main person's name on the team and your agent isn't mentioned anywhere in there, then that's probably a telltale sign that, hey, listen, maybe my agent's not the one that's actually doing the business. They're just a face on a brochure, or part of a team, in that one of the faces in that team. And so just again, dig a little bit deeper, make sure you have that person, because at the end of the day, real estate seems really simple from the outside. It's like, hey, I find a house, I make an offer, I get my keys, I close. It's never that simple. There's multiple negotiations in a transaction. The first negotiation is just getting your offer accepted, which right now is a little bit easier than it has been over the last couple of years because of the market changing. But that's negotiation number one. There's multiple negotiations that need to happen. Repair request, sometimes the appraisal, just different things. And you need an agent that has experience on your side to be able to handle those negotiations to get things in your favor, even when the other side might start the conversation with they're not going to do it. It's all about using leverage, using that experience from past transactions in order to kind of get you to the finish line.
So, Jeb, question number one there tells us that they're active, they're closing transactions, they're in the market, and they're capable of representing you. Question number two, what neighborhoods or areas do you specialize in, and how familiar are you with my target location? Some people are very specific. They have a small neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Some people it's a city. Some people it could be multiple cities when they reach out. I'm open to all of these. But talk us through what is important about that and how that question should be handled when someone is asking an agent, I want to buy in the city of Huntington Beach. What should the answer be?
This is a difficult one, because, you should, let me start with the idea that you should have an agent that is familiar with your area, that sold transactions, closed homes in your market, right? I mean, first and foremost, they should be there. You shouldn't have an agent that their primary hub is, say, Huntington Beach, where I'm located, and you're looking to buy a home in San Diego and you're using me as your go-to, right? Unless we have the conversation and you know the property and you've said, hey, Jeb, I know that's not your market, but I still would like you to represent me, and you understand all of that, then that's a different conversation. But what most people go into the process, they're looking for an agent to find them the home. They're looking for their agent to tell them about the area, the restaurants, the shopping, the school district, the ins and outs, all of those things, the good and bad. And in all reality, I love San Diego. I've been to San Diego more times than I can count, but I don't know the neighborhoods, the areas well enough to be able to guide you. And I'm using San Diego as an example. I mean, I have friends that sell everywhere south of LA. I mean, and they're like a 4 or 5 person team. And I'm like, how do you drive to North LA one day and then almost to the border the next day and serve your clients with the same level of service? And some people are okay with it, but it's understanding it up front and not just going with the person that says, hey, yeah, I know it. Provide me expertise. Like, I have a map, for example, of all the transactions that I've closed in my career. I can show you a map and it will show you a little dot if I've been in that area. There's a lot of places I've done a lot of business, and then there's places where I've done ones and twos. but you shouldn't necessarily go with the person that say focuses on one specific area and be, if they say Huntington Beach is their primary market, well, Costa Mesa, Fountain Valley, some of these areas where we are close enough to say, yeah, that's the same. But what they shouldn't be doing is selling you a house in Santa Monica or, Big Bear. That's a completely different environment.
And what I'm hearing, Jeb, is there's two really important things here as to why this matters. One is that local knowledge. Is it school districts, crime rates, local amenities, gyms, culture, arts, whatever it may be. And again, let's also remember to some people that doesn't matter. They don't look to their realtor for that. That stuff is important to all of us. But sometimes you'll get a call. Jeb, we have a client that we just closed last month. I did the loan. You represented him. He found the home. All he wanted was someone to do the negotiation part. And if that's you, that's totally okay. So maybe this question doesn't matter. The second piece of it is if Jeb operates here in Huntington Beach and you want to buy in San Diego, Jeb has an amazing network of agents here in Huntington. Everyone knows Jeb. Jeb knows everyone. So I hear all the time you're calling on a listing and it's a buddy conversation because you've done 3 transactions with them. You've been at board meetings with them. Now, if you go to San Diego, you have a great network. You might know 2 or 3 agents in San Diego. You don't have that same type of rapport. So again, is that important? It can be helpful. It can be beneficial.
Sure.
Decide if that is important to you. If you're the person who's going to go into Redfin, Zillow, or even just an MLS drip from your realtor, and you're going to go drive these neighborhoods, you're going to research the schools, you're going to find the property, and you just want someone to make the offer, negotiate, and manage the transaction, this may not be important. But I think for most of us, you want that type of insider knowledge from a local expert with a local network of other realtors.
Well, there's 2 things you said, Josh, that brought up a story that I want to tell. So the client that we closed last month, where essentially he found the house, I was just writing the offer. The first house that we went under contract with, I basically told him not to buy the house. Have an agent that's willing to tell you things like that. And the reason for this is that house had problems that, in my experience, aren't fixable with the budget that he had. Foundation issues. I mean, it was probably the worst foundation I've seen on a house in my career. And he was ready to move forward. And I'm like, think about this. And so we went through it. So have an agent that's willing to do that, even in the scenario where they're just writing offers for you. But the second thing, Josh, is the local thing is important because, for example, take my neighborhood. My neighborhood is weird in the sense that you have certain properties with much less square footage selling at a much higher premium than some of the homes with higher square footages. And for an outsider looking in, they could go, well, it's the location of that home in the neighborhood. It could be the upgrades. It could be a number of things without actually knowing why people are doing certain things in the neighborhood and knowing certain floor plans and layouts and that sort of thing. That's where market knowledge goes far and above anything that, and your best friend in another county that wants to represent you can bring to the table. So it's experience in so many different facets that you need in order to be able to, ultimately get you the house at the best price and the best terms.
Well, Jeb, one last story, and I'll kind of one-up you on that. You guys that listen for a long time know that I have a second home that I own with my in-laws in Rancho Mirage. When we bought that, I used a realtor in that area, and we knew what development we wanted to be in. But there's 850 units, 3 9-hole golf courses, so 27 different holes. There are nuances to floor plans. There were nuances to where in that 850 unit development, which hole you were on, which direction you faced. I didn't know any of that. Could I manage the whole process? Could I have earned a commission and decreased the cost of my transaction? Because in California, mortgage people are licensed real estate brokers. Could have absolutely done that. But no, in no world did I want that, because we knew we wanted to be in that complex, but I also knew there was so much about that development that I didn't know. And I think most of you listening are going to lean more into that category versus the person that we just closed that loan for that said, Jeb, here's the house, go write the offer or negotiate with the listing agent.
No, absolutely. So, number of transactions, we've talked about local market knowledge. The next thing I would say is ask your agents how they're competing in certain situations. We've come out of an environment where it's been a multiple offer situation. You've had to be competitive. That's one market. The other market is we're kind of moving into a market that's going to be a little bit slower. Homes are going to be sitting on the market longer. Days on the market are going to be higher. You're going to have price reductions. what's the approach in these scenarios, right? How are you negotiating deals differently in different environments, and what kind of experience do you have in these sort of environments? What we found, Josh, is that the average tenure, I think, of a real estate agent, I believe, is about 3 years, if I remember correctly. Which means if that's the case, then you have agents that have never sold a home in a market where homes actually sit on the market longer than probably 60 days. That's a different negotiating environment than one where it's selling in 2 to 3 days, right? It's not just go in and lowball an offer and make an offer. It's strategizing, based on comparables, based on different things, the market and other things, in order to kind of facilitate the transaction in a different way.
So when I look at this, the two separate situations, or any situation, what do you want from your agent? Number one, once you find the right house, you want to make sure you get it, but you don't want to win at all costs. You don't want to overpay. You don't want to leave money on the table. And we're transitioning from that market for the better part of 3 years, where it was, what can you offer the seller to spice up your offer, to make it more attractive to other people? And in some areas and some properties, we're absolutely transitioning to, what can I ask the seller for? What's most important to me? Do I want to come down off of the sale price? Do I want them to cover all my closing costs so I stay more liquid? Do I want to permanently buy down my interest rate 0.5% to make that payment more affordable? But the big thing there is, an agent, going back to big point number one, how many transactions have you done, that they're in the market, they know where you're at, they know where this property that you've decided to offer on stacks up to the others, and can advise you how, on a 1 to 10, how much do you want this house? So then with that, here's where we think the market is. Where do we start those negotiations? And it's shocking, Jeb, because I get on a lot of this all here. We've given a pre-approval letter. They're out shopping. Agent calls and says, hey, we're making a $620,000 offer. Can you send me an updated pre-approval letter? I send it over. 5 minutes later, the phone rings from the borrower, and they say, what do you think we should ask the seller for? I'm like, well, I mean, your agent is really the source of this. I can tell you what you can ask for, but I haven't talked to the listing agent. I don't know that neighborhood. Is there one house on the market, or are there 14 houses on the market? Has this been on the market 1 day or 22 days? Is it a perfect HGTV home, or is it a Sanford and Son flipper house? Like, all of those things go into that. And if your agent doesn't have a system for knowing what this property is, how badly you want it, and how that dictates what you're going to negotiate to make sure that you win, but again, with getting everything coming to you, or not paying any more than you absolutely necessarily need to get that property under contract.
You don't want to win at any cost. I can get your offer accepted every time if price isn't an issue, but the thing is, price should be an issue. It should be the top priority in most cases, pretty close to the top, in how you approach that transaction. So you want to pay a fair price, fair terms, reasonable for everyone, without doing crazy things, right? Without putting yourself at risk. And I will tell you, there's a lot of people out there that have their own self-interest ahead of their clients and can get in the way of transactions. Negotiating in the way of transactions. There's multiple things that can happen that that puts you at put your client at risk, or you at risk of not getting your offer accepted. I can't tell you how many times I'll have a conversation with my client. Somebody makes an offer on a property and they say it's listed at $1 million. Somebody wants to offer $950, and I say, they send me the offer, and the agent, I negotiate with my client, and I say, you know what, my client is saying $975 is the least they'll take at this point. And then immediately that client has a response and says, well, there's no way my client will consider that. It's like, have you talked to your client? Have you gone out and had the conversation, or are you letting your emotions get in the way of the transaction and kind of hindering the negotiating process? That's what you don't want, right? You need an agent that stays neutral, that's there to negotiate on your behalf, but with your best interest in mind, and knowing along the way exactly what's taking place.
And Jeb, I just got to see this up front from both sides of a transaction. We always ask our agents, please copies. 99% of the time an offer is presented through email. I said, when you present the offer, can you please CC me on it? I will follow up with the listing agent. answer any questions the agent has, the seller has, and go through any questions and confirm the strength of our qualification. So we had that situation with a listener to the show. We've got them fully pre-approved. You connected them with a great team up in the Sacramento area, and they made an offer last week that they knew was aggressive. The house had been listed for $1 million, got dropped to $900,000, and they made an $800,000 offer. Ooh. But the funny thing was the listing agents basically kept me. They were just doing reply all. I was kind of in the chain back and forth between the two agents. So just last night, there was an offer accepted. They went in on another one, came in low, got a counter offer. But long way of saying, you could see in the communication from both agents that each of them were doing the right thing. Cool. I understand what you're offering, or I understand what you want. Let me talk to my client. And then the next email is, hey, I talked to my client. This is where they're at. Hope we can put this together. And both of them had a little bit of back and forth. One ended up that the seller wanted 860, couldn't come down off of 860, and our buyer was not willing to do it. The next one, there was a much narrower range and a couple emails back and forth, and we're open in escrow today.
Well, with that said, guys, if you're anywhere in the country, you need a top real estate agent, someone to guide you through the process, reach out. Use that referral link in the description. We can definitely get you connected. And if you're here local, somewhere to Orange County, I can personally guide you through the process. That same referral link will get you in touch with our team. And the same goes for the mortgage side. Josh can get you hooked up anywhere in the country by using that same link. So Josh, if we go into the fourth thing that people really should pay attention to, and that's basically the process of start to finish. Do you have a process, or do you wing it? Is it different every time? Is it the same? What's communication look like? I think it's very, very, it needs to be laid out, fully transparent in how the process is going to go.
Well, I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but I know you have a tool that goes out to buyers. And I don't know how early you give it to them in the process, but that thing that you built in High Note that tells them, here are all of the things that are going to happen throughout the process. This is what you need to be aware of, and this is what comes next. So basically, we try to do the same thing on the mortgage side, but your realtor should be able to give you a timeline of, these are all the things that are going to happen. This is when they're going to happen. This is what it means. And this is what comes next. Because there are so many things, like for me on the mortgage side, once we have that contract, it's essentially a non-event. But on the real estate side, there are a number of things in that first week that you have to do. So for a realtor, to me, like the first week is really busy and the last week of escrow gets busy. Is that kind of what you would see it as?
Yeah, I think so. And what I will tell you, in as long as I've doing this, the people that I first did transactions for 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, and now the process is entirely different, right? It's not the same process. The process gets more and more fine-tuned as we go through, because I realize that, hey, these people didn't understand this, or I didn't go over this like I should have. So it's always being constantly remodeled, in a sense, restructured, so that there is transparency, so that we're laying out. So yes, I do now send out this High Note presentation up front with a series of videos that kind of goes through the steps. If you're looking to buy a home, once you buy a home, once you go into escrow, this is what it looks like. Once you go into escrow, this is what it looks like, all the way up to close, so that they can go as fast as they want through that to realize what the steps are, or they can kind of take them, as they happen. And that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it. It doesn't mean I'm not there for Q&A and to go more in depth on it. It's just like, hey, listen, this is kind of, what's going to happen. I'm here. We're going to walk through it, but some people they want to know the entire process up front. Some people want to take it step by step. They don't want to get too far ahead. So it's all about laying out the pieces so that someone can take it at their own pace. But there needs to be something there, because I can't tell you how often you talk to somebody and they're like, I submitted an offer. I don't know if it got accepted or not. I haven't heard back. What do you mean you haven't heard back? Well, I don't know. My agent hasn't called me in the last 3 days. What? Because I have friends that don't use me as their real estate agent. They have other people that are closer, that their brother, sister, somebody they've done a past transaction with. There's somebody that they're loyal to, and that's okay. But when you're having conversations like that and you're like, what do you mean you don't know where you are in the process? Well, that's a problem. And so you need to make sure there's clear, consistent communication throughout the process.
Something that I always like to fall back on from us in the industry, whether it's mortgage or real estate, if you don't have a system, you have as many systems as you have clients. And most of our clients have no idea how it should look, how it should work, what should come next. Occasionally, you'll get a super detailed engineer that has researched everything and they're telling you, hey, here's my timeline of everything that's going to happen. That's 1 in a million. So it is a really important question that your realtor be able to answer quickly and directly, high level. I mean, they don't need to go down to bullet point of every day of a 30-day escrow, what's going to happen, but they need to be able to put that together. And hopefully they have a document of some sort that can walk you through it.
And what I will tell you is that my process is going to change again as of January 1st. My wife's coming on. She's going to help out with, facilitating transactions and handling a lot of the client communication and stuff on the back end, while I'm negotiating and doing other parts of the transaction. So the transaction pieces are going to change. It's going to be a more streamlined process. It's going to be better for the consumer. It's going to be more transparent. Everything, it's just improving. And so you need somebody that's taking those steps and guiding you through so that you're not lost in the middle of a transaction, right? The last thing you want to do is spend 30 days having no idea what just happened. And if I'm honest, Josh, that's why the podcast exists, right? It's so that because there is a lack of transparency, a lack of knowledge and steps of what the process should look like for most people. So the fact that you're here, the fact that you're listening is a really good step in making sure that you're taken care of.
So question number 5, Jeb, is a big one, an important one, an interesting one, and a recent change. But let's just do a quick recap. Question number 1, how many transactions have you completed in the last 12 months? What percentage were representing buyers? Number 2, what neighborhoods or areas do you specialize in? And how familiar are you with my target area? 3, how do you help buyers compete in different offer situations, whether that's multiple offer, whether it's asking for concessions or a lower price? Number 4, what is your process for guiding buyers from offer to close? What does the system look like? What can I expect throughout the process in terms of what's going to happen and how you're going to communicate with me? Now, the last one here, Jeb, is a big one. How will the recent changes to buyer agent compensation affect how we work together? This is a new one. We've had this, 60 days? This process has been in place. Yep. I haven't seen a lot of change yet, but there's definitely some change. How does that question get answered from your end, Jeb?
Well, it varies. Unfortunately, there's not a straightforward answer, right? Compensation, commissions are negotiable. They're not the same on every single transaction. I have a number that I would like to get on every transaction. What I will tell you is that doesn't happen because of negotiation. But it's a conversation that you need to be having initially. Before you sign anything with your agent, you need to understand compensation, what that your agent is expecting out of the transaction, the level of service that they're going to provide when they're asking for that, right? Because the level of service you provide might vary, or the compensation might vary depending on that level of service. I know agents out there now that have created a tiered system where, hey, listen, if you just want me to write an offer for you, you're going to go find a property, it's this price. If you want full service and you want top of the line, me doing everything like I've always done in the past with my clients, then it's this. And so, and there might be something in between, but it's all about knowing that up front. But what I will say, Josh, on this topic is that don't let it overcomplicate the process, because it's really easy to have these conversations with an agent now talking about compensation and an additional fee that you might have to pay depending on the transaction, and get it really worked up about it, and then finding out it's a non-issue because the seller is willing to pay it, because there are alternative ways to make it happen where it's not actually coming out of your pocket. And I think there's a lot of confusion about it. Over time, this will be the new norm. This will be something that's a non-issue, a non-topic. But for the time being, it needs to be a conversation you're having so that you know expectations. You can build it in if it's something that you think you might have to pay, or something that you want to negotiate as part of your contract.
To some degree, that front end conversation is kind of like a prenuptial agreement. If we get to this situation, here is how we're going to handle it. Mm-hmm. For the most part, what I'm seeing is sellers are still paying that compensation, but not all of them are. So we're just going to have a conversation before we go out and do work, look at homes, drive you around, make negotiations, make those phone calls with listing agents. We're going to know what my expectation is, what your expectation is. And hopefully once we find the right house, the seller is still going to pay that compensation, and it is a non-event. But by having the conversation up front, you just make sure everyone's on the same page, has the same expectations and the same understanding. So overall, a lot of people freaked out about this NAR settlement. It was going to be the end of the world. The agents are all going out of business. I feel like it's kind of been a plus for everyone just to have those conversations up front.
And it kind of goes back to the third thing that we talked about here, Josh, the question about how you're going to write offers and compete in certain situations. I've had it like a number of 3 to 4 different ways. In fact, there's really 4 ways a seller can pay compensation, and I've had all 4, where the seller pays it all, where the seller pays part of it, where the buyer pays the full compensation, and where both people kind of split it. Some seller pays a little bit, buyer pays a little bit. So I've had all of them. And in some cases, we structured it where the buyer paid it to make their offer more competitive. So it's all about knowing how to do certain things and the buyer being okay and understanding it all in order to get to the finish line. But understand it is negotiable. It is something that shouldn't be a line in the sand. It should be, hey, listen, this is my fee, but if the seller comes back and they renegotiate, then we'll have another conversation. And ultimately, you get the option to decide how you want to move forward. But one thing I want to add to this, Josh, it's not in our list. Add this as a bonus one. I would have a conversation with your agent because now you have to sign a buyer broker agreement going into the transaction. And there are ways to cancel it, but there's also ways to get locked into it. Have a conversation with your agent up front about what the cancellation policy looks like with them if you decide to go a different direction. Because what I've had is I just had a seller reach out to me in Massachusetts that wants to change agents. She doesn't feel like her agent is doing a good job. So she reached out to me looking for another agent. I said, hey, listen, I can't give you advice because you're under contract, but I'll let you talk to somebody up there and you can have a conversation and what have you. She talked to the gentleman that I referred her to. She wanted to move forward with him, but she said, hey, I called my current real estate agent and all he'll do is withdraw the contract. He won't cancel the listing in the MLS, which means that the other agent can't list it. They'll just withdraw it. So they're technically still under contract with the current agent, but it's keeping her from being able to relist it with the other person, which is a really shitty move, in my opinion. If you're that agent, grow up, like do something different. And that's
just vindictive. There's no benefit to that agent.
I'm fully calling out the agents that do business like that. It is the wrong way to do business. Do business with people who want to do business with you. And if they don't, let them move on. That's how I do business. If you get under contract with me and it's not what you thought it was, or you've decided to go, that's okay. I'm not going to be happy about it, but I'm also not going to tie you into something that's going to end up hurting you or affecting your ability to do something else. And you really need to get that in writing or have a comfort level with the person saying that to know that and believe it, so that you don't put yourself in a position. And if I'm being honest about anything that we've talked about today, Josh, that's probably, that should have been in there. It came to me in having this conversation, but it is really, really important because I see it very, very often where people get locked into things that they don't want to be part of. And then they feel like they have to move forward. Otherwise, they're going to screw themselves.
Well, Jeb, I think that's really good. These 5 questions, if you had no idea what to ask a realtor, you knew you wanted to buy a house and you wanted to interview 2-3 realtors to figure out who was going to be the best to represent you. If you go through these 5 questions, you're going to cover 98% of everything that you need to know, want to know. But more importantly, just having that conversation is going to tell you how this person communicates, how they think on their feet, how they handle themselves, and to a degree, how they negotiate. So from that perspective, I think we've done a pretty good job. Hopefully, anyone watching feels the same and got enough value out of this that they feel confident to go ahead and have conversations with a real estate agent.
Absolutely. And if we can be of any service to you at all, do us a favor, use that referral link in the description of this video. And if you want to know the 5 questions that you should ask your lender before buying a home, do me a favor and check out this video here.